One of the most exciting additions that come with new patches in Tarkov are all the new guns and attachments that usually coincide with that new patch. Ideally, we get 2 or 3 new weapons, sometimes more, sometimes less. But patch 0.13 was definitely a solid one for new guns. The RSH-12, the Ash-12 revolver, which is basically like a pocket monster, the SR-2, a new potential rival to the MP7 in terms of the king of SMGs, and my personal favorite this wipe, one that I've been waiting for a long time since I learned it would make it into the game, the AUG. In fact, we got 2 versions of it, the A1 and A3 versions respectively. While I haven't used the other 2 guns that much because I'm not high enough level to run them effectively, I have been all over the AUG, especially since I've hit Peacekeeper level 3. I was really curious how it would perform and what was available to customize on it. And overall, my thoughts are positive. Much better to say when compared to something like the G36, and it was very rough when it initially released. Either way, the AUG has really caught my attention and has been the primary gun in my hands whenever I get the chance to run it. I've been doing a lot of the Punisher stuff recently, so my gear options have been limited, but since getting to part 4, it's been my go-to gun for Shoreline for that part of that quest line. So, the base version of the AUG, the A1 version, can be bought at Peacekeeper level 2 for a little under 600 USD. At least that's what I hope it is, considering when I go to look at the prices, they're all inflated again. I don't know if that's a bug or not, but when I look at it, it's like $600 usually. And while this version is definitely not as modular as the A3 version, technically there's a little trick you can do to make it that way, but we'll get to that later. The base gun has 62 ergo, which is actually a lot more than I was expecting it to have, considering there isn't much you can do in terms of customization. It also has 63 vert and 211 horizontal recoil, which I've learned over the years, the more they change the game, the less these numbers actually mean. But there is one thing to note about the recoil, and it is how much it actually has in terms of horizontal recoil. It's unusual when we're so accustomed to guns that are not best in slot shooting into the sky after only a couple rounds. This gun will throw you off the first time you use it, and it definitely takes a little bit of practice to adjust to how it fires. But once you do, it kind of feels like any other gun. It also has an interesting rate of fire, 715 rounds per minute, more than most AK variants, but not as fast as something like an M4. But what this does mean is that it's going to be more reliable in close quarters when in full auto when compared to something like an AK at around 600 to 650 rounds per minute. This is a smaller point, but the bolt-up configuration with the mag behind the trigger means the gun is also shorter than a lot of other rifles, meaning it'll be a lot easier to handle when inside tight buildings, and you won't get the dreaded gun point to the side when you need to take someone out. Both versions of the AUG come with a built-in 1.5 times magnification scope already on the weapon. And while it certainly won't win any awards for the best scope in the game, it is very easy to use and has built-in rear irons on the top rail. Again, even if they aren't amazing, all the necessary parts are there to use the gun. You just have to get used to it when you have it in your hands. Now, for the A3 version, there isn't much difference in regards to this weapon. The stats are very similar, but the A3 technically does have better stats, if only by a small margin. 68 ergo, 61 vert, and 205 horizontal recoil. So not a huge difference, but still, technically it's better. The scope's also better too. It has rails for an actual red dot that can just sit on top of the 1.5 times scope, so that technically makes it better as well. Where the A3 variant shines is the ability to swap out that built-in scope for any optic of your choice. This is why you would want to upgrade from the A1 to the A3 version. Having your own scope makes this gun a million times easier to use in general. But personally, I've been running around with the compact prism, the little 2X, and it's actually been really working out for me. But let's say you don't want to buy the A3 AUG outright. Can you change the scope on the A1 version? Actually, yes, you can. Once you get Peacekeeper level 3, and you can get all the extra parts that would normally go on the A3 variant, by swapping out the receiver on the A1 for the more modular A3, you can basically take the AUG and turn it into a tricked out one. It has its own suppressors as well, but you can also buy a muzzle attachment that lets you equip any 5.56 suppressor you like, making the AUG even more flexible than some of the other weapons. The only thing you can't do to the A1, I wish you could, is switch out the foregrip that is attached to the gun. Being able to put something like an RVG on the gun would just make it that much more effective. Maybe in the future there'll be some rails that can go on the bottom of each of the AUGs, but who knows. The fact that we can do this much on day one says a lot more than some other guns, unfortunately. Sorry, Benelli Shotgun, you still haven't gotten any rails yet, and I wish you did. The AUG is not the best gun in the game, and most likely will never be, but it's a fun and interesting weapon that can be bought on a budget, and if you manage to survive some raids and make a little money, can be upgraded and transformed into a very powerful weapon. It's not perfect and certainly has its own problems, the bizarre recoil being probably the #1 factor as to why people might be hesitant to try it, but I implore you to give it a chance and see what happens. It can be on the flea, sometimes cheaper than PK's asking price, and again, keeping our reinvestment conversation in the back of our minds, if you survive a couple raids and have PK3 unlocked, then you can really make the AUG much more effective and enjoyable to use overall. Let me know in the comments if you've used this gun and what your thoughts are. Did you enjoy it? Do you think it's awful? Potential meta gun? Be sure to sound off in the comment section, and please, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe for more videos about new Tarkov guns and if they're usable or not. Also, apologies for my voice. I've been sick for the last week, and I'm feeling better enough to not only actually have a voice, but to be able to use it for these voiceovers. So if it sounds a little different, I'm sorry about that, but I do hope to see you in future ones.